What if the most devastating financial crash wasn't caused by a bank, but by a battleship? We believe markets are driven by numbers, by earnings reports and interest rates. But what if the entire system is hostage to something far more primitive? A few wooden ships, a stretch of water, and a single, stubborn decree. Napoleon, the master of land warfare, knew this, and in 1806 he launched a new kind of war, not against an army, but against the very concept of trade. This was a 200-year-old tactic, but today, the exact same strategy is being used to threaten everything from the Panama Canal to the digital payment systems that control your money. This is the choke point pattern. And by the end of this video, you will learn the critical historical lessons of substitution and counterflow, powerful strategies born from this crisis that protect value when the main routes are sealed.
This is Finance Beyond Seas. We explore the moments where the currents of maritime history and the tides of the global economy collide. We're here to navigate the wreckage of the past, to find the financial lessons that will protect you today. We analyze history and systems, not futures. Nothing presented here is financial advice. It is purely historical and economic commentary.
To understand the paralysis, we must go to 1806. Napoleon Bonaparte is the undisputed master of Europe. His armies have crushed Austria, Prussia, and Russia. But one nation still defies him: Great Britain. Protected by the Royal Navy, Britain is untouchable by invasion. So Napoleon decides on a different strategy. If he cannot conquer Britain with soldiers, he will strangle it with economics. On November 21, 1806, from the captured city of Berlin, he signs a decree that will become known as the Continental System. The decree is simple and brutal. All trade with the British Isles is forbidden. Any ship from any nation caught sailing from a British port will be seized. He intends to lock Britain out of Europe, starve its factories of raw materials, and bankrupt its merchants. The effect was instant paralysis. But the real victim wasn't London, it was Amsterdam. At the time, the Amsterdam Bourse was one of the planet's premier financial centers. Its wealth was built entirely on maritime trade. Napoleon's system turned Amsterdam's harbor into a graveyard of rotting masts. Trade volume didn't just fall, it evaporated. Dutch trade, which had stood at 300 million francs in 1805, collapsed to just 50 million by 1808. The Amsterdam Exchange, cut off from its lifeblood, froze. This immediate paralysis of a key financial center, it's the exact same shock investors feel today when a choke point, like the Panama Canal, suddenly runs dry from a drought, halting trade. But more importantly, this 1806 crisis forced the creation of a brand new industry, a powerful lesson in substitution, which we will explore as a core protection strategy later in this video. But first, the crisis in France got even worse. The paralysis spread. In Paris, Napoleon's own capital, the Bourse suffered. French industry needed sugar from the Caribbean and cotton from India, goods all controlled by British shipping. Prices for these colonial goods skyrocketed. Sugar, a simple staple, increased in price by 400%. The system created a continent-wide depression, sparking riots from Rome to Hamburg. The micro-lesson from this first event is clear. When a government attempts to weaponize trade and completely shut down a market, the blockade is never clean. It creates a vacuum that destroys the wealth of its own citizens and allies first. But it wasn't just Napoleon's decree that caused the freeze. The British response threw gasoline on the fire. In 1807, Britain retaliated with its own blockade, the Orders in Council. Their decree was the mirror image of Napoleon's. Any ship trading with France or its allies was now considered hostile, unless it first sailed to a British port and paid a crippling tax.
This created a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario for global shipping. Imagine you are a merchant captain from America. If you sail to France, Napoleon's navy might seize your ship. But if you stop at London to pay the tax, the French will seize you for complying with the British. The two largest economies on Earth had effectively declared the entire ocean a no-go zone. This is what truly paralyzed the markets. It wasn't just a lack of supply, it was total uncertainty. You couldn't price risk, you couldn't insure cargo, you couldn't even leave port. The theme becomes sharper. The worst-case scenario for a market isn't a bad economy. It's a system where the rules are broken and unpredictable. This pattern of weaponized choke points echoes forward, long after the age of sail. Let's sail to 1973. The new colonial good isn't sugar, it's oil. And the new blockade isn't by a navy, but by a cartel. In response to the Yom Kippur War, the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, declared an embargo. They would not sell oil to nations that supported Israel, including the United States, the UK, and the Netherlands. Sound familiar? It's the Continental System, but with oil. The effect was identical to 1806. The flow of the world's most critical commodity was suddenly turned off. The results were immediate paralysis. In the US, gas stations ran dry. In Europe, governments implemented car-free Sundays. But the stock markets? They were massacred. The 1973 to 74 stock market crash was a 2-year bear market that wiped out 45% of the S&P 500's value. It was, at the time, the worst crash since the Great Depression. Fast forward to today. We tell ourselves we live in a digital economy. We trade in the cloud. We are beyond these old-world problems. We are not. Our global system is more dependent on physical maritime trade than Napoleon could have ever dreamed. 90% of everything you own came to you on a ship. And the choke points are narrower than ever. We saw this paralysis begin just this past year, but the new blockade wasn't an army, it was a lack of rain. The Panama Canal, which handles a massive portion of trans-Pacific trade, began to run dry. A severe drought forced authorities to slash the number of ships that could pass through daily. The result was a traffic jam of hundreds of vessels, forcing companies to reroute thousands of miles around South America.
Now look at the other active choke points. The Red Sea, where attacks forced shipping lines to abandon the Suez route. The Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil passes, under constant threat. But the modern continental system is even more insidious. Today, a blockade can be an underwater explosion, like the mysterious 2022 sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines. And then, there is the digital blockade. When a nation is cut off from the SWIFT international payment system, that is financial embargo. All these modern examples, drought, sabotage, sanctions, are just Napoleon's blockade with new technology. And just like in 1806, the winners won't be the ones who panic. They will be the ones who understand counterflow, how value moves to neutral ports and alternative systems. We will show exactly how that works in our strategy section. The pattern is clear. Our hyper-efficient, just-in-time global economy is a miracle of engineering, but it has no resilience. It is a taut wire. The slightest tremor, whether from a missile, a drought, or a digital keystroke, can send a shockwave that paralyzes the entire network. What does this mean for you? It means your portfolio, your pension, and your sense of security are balanced on the deck of a container ship in a very narrow, very dangerous stretch of water. The risk is not that you own stock in a bad company. The risk is that you own stock in a good company that suddenly can't get its parts from Asia. The risk is that your energy bills double, not because of local demand, but because of a conflict 5,000 miles away. The true cost of being unprepared is being blindsided. It's assuming that the normality of the last 20 years is permanent. The investors in Amsterdam in 1805 thought the same thing. The drivers in 1972 thought the same thing. When these systems break, the paralysis is fast. Your assets might be safe in the market, but the value of that market is tied to a flow of goods you never see. When the flow stops, the financialized world freezes. So, how do you protect yourself from a world of choke points? The lesson from Napoleon's failure is not about hoarding. It's about adaptation and flow.
First, as we promised, history teaches the value of substitution. When Napoleon's blockade cut off Europe from cane sugar, the crisis sparked a new industry, extracting sugar from beets. The winners weren't those hoarding the old resource. They were the ones who adapted to the new one. This strategy is about identifying your critical dependencies and cultivating the adaptability to switch when the flow stops. Second, understand counterflow. The Continental System destroyed legal trade, but it created a golden age for smugglers and neutral ports. When a primary choke point closes, the value doesn't vanish, it moves to the longer route, the neutral jurisdiction, the alternative system. The protective strategy here is intellectual, learning to spot these second-order effects and where the value will divert. Finally, the blockade teaches the difference between ownership and access. In 1806, your wealth was worthless if it was on a ship trapped in a blockaded harbor. The accessibility of your assets became more important than their paper value. Today, a digital blockade, like a payment system freeze, is the same. True financial safety is not just owning value on a ledger, it is ensuring you have access to it. We are told that we live in an age of finance. We do not. We live in an age of physics and geography, merely disguised by finance. History does not offer a crystal ball, but it does provide a map of the reefs. It shows us where the rocks are, where empires have sunk before. The names on the map change, but the geography of risk remains the same. The global economy is a maritime economy. Its currents are trade. Its storms are war. Your entire financial life is a passenger on this ocean. The lesson of Napoleon, of OPEC, and of the Panama drought is simple. Do not mistake the calm seas of today for a guarantee of tomorrow. Be the one who carries a lifeboat. If this voyage into the past gave you a new perspective on today's financial risks, subscribe to Finance Beyond Seas. We chart these dangerous waters to help you navigate them. What modern choke point do you think is the most fragile? Tell us in the comments.